It is the 2nd of January, in the year 1611, and in Čachtice, a village in what was then Upper Hungary, and is now in western Slovakia, the trial of Elisabeth Báthory, a Hungarian countess who, together with several of her subjects, is facing charges of dozens of murders of young girls who were to be tortured in the most horrible ways for several years. She was the defendant, but she avoids direct participation in the trial because of her position. Her fate is thus decided based on the testimony of her alleged accomplices, and the trial quickly begins to pick up speed. After years of silence and turning a blind eye, suddenly everyone has something to say. Elisabeth was born on the 7th of August, 1560, in the Hungarian village of Báthory, near present-day Romania. She came from one of the most influential families, the Báthory family. Although the family had split into two branches, the Csejte and the Somlyo branches, 2 centuries earlier, wealthy noblemen often married across lines for property and territory. This happened with Elisabeth's parents. She grew up in luxury and received the best education from a young age. She knew German, Latin, and Greek as well as Hungarian. However, she grew up in harsh times. The threat from the Turks was growing, and the execution and torture of prisoners was a daily occurrence. To ensure security in their county, the Báthorys betrothed Elisabeth, at only 13 years old, to another prominent nobleman, Ferenc II Nadasdy. His family also owned extensive territory, and its influence extended to present-day Slovakia. The ceremony took place on the 8th of May in Vranov nad Topľou, and as a wedding gift, the 15-year-old Elisabeth received a castle from her husband in Čachtice, 53 kilometers away. She became the Lady of Čachtice. Elisabeth and Ferenc had 5 children, but 2 of them died at a young age. The 3 children, Anna, Catalin, and Paul, are cared for by the governess. In 1578, Count Ferenc took over one of the flanks of the Hungarian army and went to fight the Turks. In the year 1593, the conflict then turns into the so-called Long Turkish War. During that time, Elisabeth manages the family estate and rules a region that is very close to the military line. The people are used to all sorts of things, even the occasional disappearance. Nadasdy enjoys fighting. He's been known to be very cruel, and he taught his wife subtle ways to punish the maids. In the year 1601, however, he begins to suffer from crippling pain in his legs, and on the 4th of January 1604, he dies. Before that, however, he manages to entrust his friend György Thurzo with an important task. From now on, it will be he who will look after the welfare of the family. Now let's go back to Elisabeth. She has been cruel to her subjects. For example, she used to pin needles under the nails of seamstresses if they ruined the stitches on her dress. But after her husband's death, her sadistic nature surfaced even more. Anna Darvulia becomes Elisabeth's right-hand woman and seems to play a big role in her life. And what began as a punishment of the servants gradually turns into an obsession. According to later testimony, she and her accomplices tortured girls with pliers, cut them with knives, or burned them with a hot iron. But her sadistic imagination went even further. For example, she would pour ice water over the girls and then leave them to freeze to death, or smear their naked bodies with honey and leave them to the bees and ants. It has also been said that she chewed pieces of flesh from the bodies of her victims while they were still alive. Elisabeth would even open a school at Čachtice Castle for girls who come from better families, where they would learn etiquette and skills important for young ladies. They swarm over immediately. No wonder it seems to them that it would be impossible to find a better mentor than a rich, noble, and educated countess. But as it soon turns out, instead of education, only suffering and death awaits the girls. For Báthory, they are not pupils, but easy prey. It is, in a way, the perfect plan. Who would dare suspect a rich and powerful noblewoman? Besides, Elisabeth always has an explanation at hand. First, she claims that cholera hit the castle, then that one of the girls went mad and killed another. But as time went on, these explanations began to seem far-fetched to the parents. and then to the priests, for whom the burials had become a sad routine. By the year 1610, the situation had gone so far that even Matthias, King of Hungary and Holy Roman Emperor, could no longer turn a blind eye to the strange deaths. He, therefore, decided that the case had to be investigated and appointed the Palatine of Hungary, a high-ranking civil servant who represented the king in certain matters, to lead the investigation. At that time, Gheorghe Thurzo was the Palatine, the same Thurzo who had promised Nadasdi on his deathbed that he would see to the welfare of his family. By March, the investigation is already underway. In the first 6 months alone, Thurzo and his assistant gathered 50 witness statements. That's enough for the Commission of Inquiry. 2 days before the end of the year, they raided the castle and arrested Báthory. When they searched the cellar, they witnessed a disturbing scene. Thurzo wrote the following about the horrific experience in a letter to his wife. When our men and servants entered the house, they found a dead girl. Another, exhausted by torture and brutal treatment, had also died. In addition, another beaten woman was sitting there, and others were tied up, whom Elisabeth had kept for another occasion. Thurzo thus finds himself in a difficult situation. On one hand, he has clear evidence of Elisabeth's guilt in his hands, but on the other, he is bound by his promise. He therefore agrees with Elisabeth's son and sisters-in-law to send her away to a convent. Soon after her arrest, however, the news spreads far and wide, and a quiet retreat to the convent is no longer an option. So Thurzo arranges for Báthory to remain under house arrest. A public scandal would endanger the reputation of the whole family. Báthory will never appear in court. Her 4 accomplices will be the main witnesses. Her friend Dorothea Semtes, the nurse Ilona Jo, the laundress Katarina Benitska, and the servant Janos Uivari, nicknamed Fitzko. As for confidant and accomplice Anna Darvulia, she died before the trial, which was set to begin on January 2nd, 1611. All the accused will confess. They helped Báthory torture and kill the poor girls. Allegedly, the total number of victims was 650. Benitska got a life sentence. However, the rest of Báthory's accomplices got the death penalty. The course of the entire trial and Báthory's guilt is now questioned by some historians. One of the main arguments is that the alleged accomplices confessed only after horrific torture. Many other witnesses only had hearsay information. Only 3 eyewitnesses testified in the trials, and they changed their statements several times during the trial. Moreover, the investigation was directed by Matthias, the Holy Roman Emperor, and the Habsburgs owed the Báthory family a considerable fortune. If the Countess had been convicted, the debts would have been wiped out. And Thurzo probably had his eye on the territory that Elisabeth administered. Nevertheless, there's plenty of evidence to support her guilt. Of the more than 300 people interviewed, only 4 said they knew nothing of Báthory's crimes. In addition, several parents testified that their daughters died while in the castle. Many servants claimed that the bodies of the girls buried in Čachtice had signs of torture. However, when the local priest suggested exhumation, Báthory refused. The records from the church confirm that whenever Báthory was at Čachtice castle, the local girls died one by one. The subjects also said that they often had to wash blood from the castle walls, and that terrible screams echoed through the corridors. Based on all this testimony, the court finally announced the verdict. In the end, it turned out relatively well for Elisabeth. In the year 1611, Elisabeth Báthory was sentenced to life imprisonment at home, as a result of the judge's agreement with Thurzo. 3.5 years later, on the 20th of August, in the year 1614, she went to complain to the guard that her hands were cold. He brushed her off. In the morning, she was found dead. The exact cause of death is unknown. She was 45 years old. The funeral took place in Čachtice, but the people asked that the Countess's body be moved elsewhere. Within a few years, the stories about Elisabeth Báthory took on a new dimension. There were now legends that the Bloody Lady of Čachtice drank the blood of young virgins and even bathed in it. We may never know the truth, but what is certain is that the horror story of Elisabeth Báthory is unique. It has survived 4 long centuries, and Elisabeth Báthory is even listed in the Guinness World Records as the greatest female murderer of all time.